Hi, welcome to today's Webio webinar. Today it's all about, as the title says, transforming customer engagement in collections. We are delighted to have Jonathan Booker, the head of Field Connect Collections from Snap Finance, with us today. And Jonathan is going to share some of the really interesting things that Snap Finance have been doing over the past months with regards to the whole digital engagement and how they've used chatbots, automation, and really how it's helped them transform their business and also keep up with customer demand and delivering that great customer experience. And really at this stage, I want to introduce Jonathan. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you on one of the Webio webinars. And Graham, hello to you.
Good morning. Good morning, John.
And really, Graham, I'm going to get and hand the baton across to yourself. You're going to run with the, you're going to be let's say the Michael Parkinson of today. You're going to ask the questions and take it from there. So over to you, Graham.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And thank you, John, for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on. And, again, we know it's a lot of time for you, and so it's very much appreciated. So before we kick off with John, I just wanted to go through a very, very quick slide of what it is that Webio have and the Webio solution. And these one slide, it'll take no more than 30 seconds. Just kick us off and sort of give you an idea and guide you down what it is that Webio do and how, what the sort of things that John's talking about and how that's affected and how it's worked with them. So the first part really is, Webio is a platform that enables you to have digital conversations with your customers. So a really important part of that is that you can actually automate as much of the conversation as you want to using automated bots, but you also can blend that in and combine that with your human agents as well. And that's really key to a really good engagement with your customers. From the point of view, there are certain conversations where, you actually don't want a bot to do the whole thing. It may do part of the heavy lifting, the ID&V piece, but actually if it's a complaint, better held by a human. If there's a vulnerability in there, better held by a human. But also you're going to get at points where people will give really strange responses to a bot, and the bot needs to understand that. And rather than getting to a loop of asking the same question over and over and over, the key is to have a great customer experience throughout. So by understanding that actually that's an answer that we don't really get and handing it to a human agent and telling the customer that, the journey is much better for them. Secondly, if I just flip on my screen there, it's about guiding the conversations as well. It's not about really letting the systems and AI and those great magpie things everyone talks about now. Machine learning, how exciting is it? It's not trying to get something that says, I think I know what they're doing. I think I know what I should say. I think I can guide that conversation. It's not about that. It's about having real rules in the background that you guide the customer down to get them to the end result that you want, and not just trying to guess what's happening. So it's really key that you've got that control in the solution. And Webio has all of that. And the last piece really is, what's it all about? Why do people do it? Well, it's about getting better results. It's about engaging with more of your customers. It's about getting your customer to the point that you want to get them to. You want a promise, you want a payment, whatever it is you need. It's about using that guidance we've mentioned here, using that combination of bots and humans to get you through to the end. That's enough about us. I said I'll keep it 30 seconds. Everyone who knows me knows that's never going to happen. It's always going to be nearer a minute. So we're going to flip on, and I'm going to move on to Snap. So John, I'm going to hand over to you. If you wouldn't mind giving us a quick overview of who Snap are in the marketplace they're in, the sort of things that you do and that you look after, if you wouldn't mind.
So we're part of a bigger sister company in the US that lends $1 billion a year. So we're not as big as that yet. We're around the 35-40 million in the UK, but we've got ambitions to step up and expand into Europe, and this is our first step. So our kind of customer base are kind of near prime and subprime customers. So the digital strategy really works well with them. They tend to be younger, kind of the 30 to 40 kind of year old market, and also they're quite tech savvy, so they're quite early adopters of tech. So we see digital as being part of a big future for us.
Excellent. Thanks, John. So we'll move on to the first few questions here. So I'm going to get the questions on the screen as well as ask them. So what we'll try and do is to just use it as a guidance, really. So the question, you can read it for yourself, but Snap traditional engagement with the customers. So really what we're sort of saying there is, before the Webio platform, before you went digital, what sort of things were you doing to engage with your customers? And how was that guiding payments? Was it what was good, what was bad? It's really a quick overview of where you were before you engaged with us.
I think when we first started, it was just inbound calls and an outbound dialer, and that's where we were traditionally. That's what they do in the States as well. So we kind of adopted their strategies early on. Plus, it's quite a common strategy in the marketplace. So we're just churning through a dialer really. We were getting some good results. So there were some good results, but we always knew that we'd have to look at different channels and mediums to contact our customers. And I think when I first met up with Webio a few years ago, probably 12 months before we started, we just introduced a field team as well. So that we'd go out and visit some customers that we can't get in contact with, and just kind of get an understanding of what's happening, and offer some solutions that way. But digital was always part of the plan, but it was just kind of building layers of a cake. So that's where we started.
Excellent. No, that's brilliant, John. It's a story we hear quite a lot. Everyone's doing the dialer piece, and everyone's sort of sending emails out and sending sort of one-way messages even on SMS, but not really doing much more than that. And obviously I was the first person to engage with you from the Webio point of view, so I know roughly where you were. The next question, sort of, you've answered partly, but if we can expand on that a little bit, will be really useful. So you're using dialers, using emails, then obviously getting your team on the street. What sort of was the point, and what really made you go, you know what, we need to change the way we're doing things? What made you start looking at different ways to engage?
I think because we were a startup, we were always going to use strategies that were familiar with us. So predominantly I came from a field collections background with some dialer, and Helen, who works closely with me at Snap, she was a kind of a dialer background. So you're always going to, as you're building a team and building a new business, you're going to rely on kind of strategies that are tried and tested and used. And digital it's been around for a bit, but we haven't really stepped our toe into it. So now if I was going to go back and build that cake again, I would start with digital first, absolutely. But you're always nervous when you haven't done that before, particularly when you've got a new job and a new role and a new business that you want to hit strategies that you know from experience. But I kind of reach out and say to people that digital, if I was to go back and do it all again now, digital probably would be the first piece. And quite quickly in our journey with Webio, we realised that digital would sit right at the front of our strategies, both in collections and in customer service. So we kind of moved that forward. SMS, somebody once said to me that when something becomes so, out of favour, it becomes revolutionary. And that's the time to kind of, invest in that strategy. And I think like the voice market and the email market is so, if you think about just as a kind of, a person yourself, if you think about how many phone calls you get from numbers you don't know that you don't even answer, how many emails, I must get 50 or 60 emails, and they're the ones that get through my kind of filters on my personal email every day. So it's such a crowded market. It's hard to kind of stand out in those in those mediums. So SMS, when you think about it, really, it kind of drops back a little bit in our culture. So actually, when you get an SMS now, it's a bit like when you get a knock on the door or somebody rings your home phone line, after 6 o'clock. It's become so kind of not well used that actually you can get to people quick and it's engaging and really interesting to them. And I think that's what we found really about SMS, that a lot more customers are receiving it, and a lot more customers that do receive it are responding back. And I think it's just because it stands out different to kind of that crowded voice and email kind of campaigns that traditionally most kind of customer service sales.
Jonathan, was there a point where doing and you're quite right, obviously you're going to start with a lot of the stuff that you're familiar with, but was there any particular point where it was that inflection point where you said we need to go digital, or was it just that organic growth into digital, or was there anything that in particular that said, right, enough of this, we need to actually now embrace digital?
Yeah, I think results are a key driver to that. For us, two things: results and also our ability to expand. And I'll probably mention that quite a lot of times as we go through. Is we're on a quite aggressive growth trajectory, and like all businesses, we want to kind of create volume and value, but not incur too much cost. Certainly, first up.
Yeah.
So it was both of those things really, that we were hitting a level in our collection results on the dialer and in the field and we knew that there was more there, but we just needed to find a different medium to do that. And also, we're all kind of under pressure for budgets, particularly now, especially in COVID, where people are nervous in the market, but we still want to press on. So so quite quickly in the journey, with the low cost but high volume of kind of digital, it just stuck its head out and kind of waved at us and said, "This is the way to go," and pointed in that direction.
No, brilliant. No, there's some great points there, actually, John. I think the whole thing when you started off and said we probably should have started off with digital, and I think a lot of people, when they jump across the line of what they've always done, the sort of the dialer stuff and the email stuff and those sort of things, and people dabbled in the web chat and whatever else, but they always think it's going to be much harder than it is to actually move across to these digital channels. Oh yeah, but WhatsApp and SMS, it's such a heavily covered market, no one reads it. But you hit that perfectly on the head, and it's exactly what we see across the board. The SMS thing is still huge. It really is, and it's not about sending out a cold SMS that just says, can you do this or can you do that, or click on the link, because people have been doing those for years, and although they do pop up on your phone and people will see them probably more than they will pick up a number they don't recognize on the phone, etc., or just delete an email they don't recognize, it's still it's just somebody wants me to do something, and they leave it. And again, this is where I think that the two-way piece makes a big difference. This sort of engaging with someone in a neurolinguistics way that says, it's an open question or it's a closed question or whatever it is, to actually get them to engage with you and doing something a bit different. And you did that. We'll talk about it a bit further on. That sort of dovetails into the next question really that we had is the automation piece really. So, yes, it's great.
Just on that point, Graham,
sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Just on that point, it is funny when you go back to somebody 6 months later and they say to you, "Oh my God, this really works. We're amazed at the results."
And how easy it was as well,
Yeah. And as Jonathan says, do you know what? Your reaction, Jonathan, isn't that dissimilar. "Gosh, we should have done this a year ago," is I think a common thing that people would say. So it's an interesting.
Well, Mark, I remember going to events with yourself, and John, you've probably done some of these as well before we actually met. But 4, 5, 6 years ago, people were talking about digital first, digital programs, and it never really happened. It was all great sort of talk and whatever, but never really happened until the last couple of years. So again, let's sort of jump back in here. Don't sort of run into the hours. I know, John, you've got other meetings after this, but sort of where I was going with that was say, okay, that's great. The SMS piece and all those things you're using, but automation, this is where we've seen big differences, moving away from agents doing the heavy lifting, sort of a little bit of self-service, but managing that very carefully. At what point did you sort of catch on to that and you sort of saw this as being a large part of what you were going to be doing?
I think we caught onto it really early once we started experimenting, kind of coming out of last Christmas. I was writing, I think we were writing a bot on Christmas Eve because we were always busy January, February, March in the collections industry. It's a big time for us for volume. So I think quite early on, when we came out of that and launched in January, we saw literally from the first campaign that automation would be key. And right back then, we had a kind of that the compass was saying to us that it was Pareto's law, good old Pareto's law, that it'd be 80-20, that we could probably automate just from those initial responses. We could probably automate 80% end to end. So a bot, if the customer chooses so, a bot could actually start and finish the process for us. So there's lots of kind of easy transactional binary things to do, like taking a payment, what's my balance, what's my arrears balance, can I change my payment date, when's my next payment date? All these kind of, easy binary kind of transactions that take up so much time for humans to kind of interact with was easily done with the bot. So right from the beginning, and the biggest win, along with the customer experience and our ability to increase volume but keep costs flat, was a big piece for us. And we're still working on that, and it's a never-ending kind of development, really. But that was kind of key to us, and probably it's a lot easier than what we expected it to be as well. And I think that's one of the great things with Webio is that we don't even rely on Webio. So if I see something that can be automated and changed, I can literally go in the bot and do that. And I think the MI gives you that as well, so that you can start to look at if people choose option 1, 2, or 3, whatever those options are. you can quite quickly see where 80% are choosing option 1, then actually we could automate that option 1. And it's that quick response that, and our ability to kind of automate that's been key for us. So,
yeah, no, brilliant. And I'm not just saying this because you're on the call now, but you actually have been dream customers for us because, we're always saying there are all these things that you can do, all these things that you can automate. Things like, someone just wants to know a balance. Let them come in and ask for a balance. And a lot of people are scared of doing that. Oh, yeah, but I need to IDMV. That's fine. A bot can IDMV. And you guys are actually doing all of this now, and you've gone live with all of that. And I know you're getting great results. We'll cover some of those sort of towards the end of metrics and whatever else. But it's been a really exciting time, and I think the automation piece probably is the biggest part of it. And I think the biggest, again, you threw it in there. I don't need to say anything really, but it's one of the biggest things people always say to me is, "Oh, that's going to be really complex to do. I've got to do APIs and webhooks and this and that and the other. Then the data, and then it's got to be a bot's got to be huge. It's going to take me years to build it." But actually, no. One of the things about the Webio platform has been, and hopefully you can back me up on this, is that actually everything's done on the front end, and building these bots literally takes hours as opposed to weeks and months and years. So it's really sort of pays quickly and powerful. I'm hearing it from most of my customers, and now hearing it from you as well, which is fantastic. So let's sort of move on again to the next one here, so we can get through them. Can you explain why you started SMS? I think you've probably already answered that to a level. Most of our clients do so because of obviously they already had the number there or whatever else in there. But from your point of view, was there a particular reason SMS was a starting point for you?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned it before. It was a space that's not well populated at the moment, so that was a big win for us. It's easy, it's cheap. I think probably the other piece is it's conversational. So I think it's that old, how do you eat an elephant, one piece at a time. Like some of the emails we were sending out when I first joined, you need a cup of tea to get through them. Where do you start? It was like it's just this mass amount of information that when you're looking on a phone. I mean, we do that now, don't we? Like if I were to text the last 30 seconds of what I've talked about, it'd be this long on your phone, wouldn't it? So people like it chunked down. So actually, I think SMS kind of reached out to us in the end because we could chunk it down, ask one question at a time, make it very conversational, and also lead people, down a certain path quite early. So a couple of pieces of information early on in SMS means that we can take them on a different kind of route and a journey. And we just found that was easy to do. And in the beginning and during COVID, which I'm sure we'll get onto a little bit later on, is that like information gathering was key. So SMS, reaching out to customers and asking them for some more information, and then going back and offering solutions just became quite natural for us as we progress through.
Super. Perfect. And you've dovetailed perfectly into where I was going to go next, John, which is actually the COVID piece. So, Mark, was you going to
ask just one question there? Yeah. Jonathan, were you surprised with the openness of people on their SMS conversations?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah, because I mean, we use two different strategies really. We kind of give people an option, or we give them free hand, and I think it's probably a good point, Mark, is that at free hand, people have kind of volunteered more information than what we thought. And that, again, with the MI and with you being able to look at that, you can then kind of reverse engineer that back. So where people were asking things in freehand that maybe we'd not thought of, we could quickly then go back literally within an hour or so and change that. So I think, it especially conversational, and then, I'm from Yorkshire, and we're talking quite a straightforward manner. It's all quite conversational. We don't use many words. We leave words out, and I just found that was important as well. That the kind of language that you're using and the openness and it's that the old saying, first seek to understand, then be understood. I think if you use that concept in your communications, that people are open and give you lots of information.
Yeah, no, it's something that we see that people don't fully appreciate. Putting let's say the power into your customer's hands, they're not under pressure on a phone call. Actually, the quality of the conversations can increase quite substantially. So yeah, no, we see that a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's it's key how you speak to people. And I have an old analogy. I won't go through it now, but if you've listened to me before, I talk about going to a bar and buying somebody a beer, or somebody buying me a beer, and it's exactly that. It's how you talk to people, the results you're going to get at the end of it. So let's move on. So you mentioned COVID during that sort of answer there, John. So I'm going to sort of switch into there. COVID was an interesting time. I think it changed things for a lot of people. People started to get worried about, how much money they were going to have. They were furloughed, so they only had 80%, or they lost their jobs. They were scared of losing their jobs. So what did they cut? What didn't they cut? How do you keep those people coming through? But also, one of the other things that changed was that people started to make contact with their creditors as well. So rather than you having to go out to them and reach them, a lot more people started to come inbound, we saw. So they were sort of trying to get hold of you and sort of find out what they could do and couldn't do. What was your experience throughout that, and sort of how did you battle through that, and with the help of Webio, hopefully?
Well, I had two experiences. I had an experience at work and I had a personal experience. So it was quite interesting to see the contrast in the two. I think we've joked about this, haven't we? Whether it was divine inspiration or great marketing or us deciding digital was the way forward before Christmas, whatever it was, we got there. And I wouldn't like to think. Well, I know exactly where we would be.
Jonathan, it was your genius. Stop.
Mark, always with the good lines. The Irish charm.
It was possibly my little bit of bravery to kind of like push it through a little bit, but we talked to you for 12 months before. We just needed the right time, and it seemed to be the right time. But yeah, maybe genius or bravery, one of those. But I'm glad we did, because experiencing it as a customer, I mean, I've got like some decent credit card providers, like top A game. I'm not going to say who they are, but I think I did tough mudder for my daughter and I wanted my money back, and I think it took me 3 months for him to even pick up the phone. I mean, and these are like premium services. And we started probably about 2 weeks before the announcement. We'd started to move our voice agents home, so it was quite easy for us because we do have we had a 50-50 kind of field stroke call center kind of split anyway. So a lot of our systems were geared to be at home. But what we decided early on was we wouldn't wait for the government, that we'd change our bots straight away. So we knew that people would dial in once they started to go through that transition. So what we decided early on was that we'd run a Webio campaign proactively, get and reach customers and get them to converse with us over digital. And I'm just so glad that we did that, because actually the call amounts into the office did go up a little bit, but our kind of answer time stayed stationary. So we were able to speak to customers that needed to speak to us. But the vast majority of customers, as we'll see in the slide in a minute, that they actually...
I'll switch that over, John, actually. I know you sent us this slide. I'll let you explain that one.
Yeah, they reached out to us. We kind of got on the front foot. We identified certain types of customers and prioritised them, reached out to them and said, look, these are the options that we've got for you: payment holidays, payment reductions, etc., etc. And you can see pretty quickly, if we hadn't done that, how the call centre would have got swamped. Because from the 23rd of March to the 7th of May, it just grew beyond all expectations. But the vast majority of that was actually proactively done by Webio. So we were able to gain information from customers that were self-employed or on furlough or needed payment holidays. And we were able to kind of like end-to-end gain information and offer them solutions using the digital bot. So actually, if you'd have rung Snap during that time, you'd have been answered in the usual 10, 15, 20 seconds, depending if it was a morning or an afternoon and what day of the week. So thank God we did that. And we were having quite a joyous experience, especially like early on when it was really sunny. So we were all quite calm. The only frustration that we were as actual customers of other businesses that you would have expected to kind of handle it a bit better. So it was a real game changer for us. We were able to be proactive. We were able to gather information, and also we were able to offer solutions digitally. And then that kept our kind of bandwidth on our voice for people that really, really needed to talk to us and to listen. But for just transactional stuff like payment holidays or reductions, we were able to do all that through the bot.
easy to say these things, but actually seeing a graph, explain how that actually made a huge difference to your business from the point of view you could carry on coping. It kept people, these things kept people busy, but stopped it being a bad, experience for the customer themselves, and kept the times within SLA and so forth. It's just really, really good to hear. I'm going to sort of switch it a little bit now and talk more about the customer side, really. So obviously, some great sort of benefits for you guys. We've heard a number of those, and we'll cover some of those off again as we go further forward. But from the customer perspective, what did you hear back from them? Were they happy with the new service? Was there any kickback from anybody? Was there a certain type of customer that preferred it, a certain type of customer that didn't like it? I mean, just again, a quick sort of overview of the experience you had with your customers themselves.
It was really positive throughout. I mean, obviously, we're a collections business and we use this as a collections tool. So the earlier in the arrear cycle, the more the customer's going to respond. That's evident. That just makes common sense. But if a customer wants to interact with us, then they will, and this is the quickest and easiest way for them to do it. I think the customers have really embraced it. And they've helped us with it. It's not just Webio and Snap, it's the customers as well that have helped us shape it and develop it as it's gone along. So it's been really important. I mean, obviously, we all get upspired now because we all get the odd, creative and interesting response, but you get that through any medium, no matter which one they choose. But there's been a massive interest in there, and it's helped us we're developing now, for instance, where customers can just text in help to that number, and it will actually, they don't even need to, we don't even need to reach out to them now. That's where we're at in our development. So that's kind of ready to go. So a customer can just text help to the number, the Snap number that they've got in their phone, and they can start an interaction from there. So I'm really excited to see what response that gets, and I think it'll be a really big response and a real positive one. But yeah, it's been received really well, Graham.
Oh, superb. No, that's good to hear. It's interesting you mentioned there that sometimes you get these weird responses back from customers. I think this is where when I was at the beginning, I was sort of saying you've got this difference between the bot and the agent, but bringing them together sort of seamlessly when needed is a really key part of all of that. I've sort of been through some that customers said it didn't understand this. What should we do? How can we control it? And it's like, well, best thing you can do is you just train it as you go along with the natural language and the intent of what people are saying. But just very quick, the worst one I ever had, most interesting one I ever had, is someone was asked what their birth date was, and they came back and said when the moon was full and the sky was dark, yet the week was not over. It's like, okay, I'll probably not be able to train the agent how to understand what day that is, but interesting. And that's, of course, it hands it over to an agent who can then ask the question again in a different kind of way, which is interesting. Okay, let's carry moving on. Channel preferences. So again, this question is there again, but what are you doing differ from what you did before? It's really about, are you finding customers that wouldn't pick up the phone, customers that wouldn't answer, emails? Again, you sort of answer it in a way, but more specifically, are you finding those people are engaging with you better? And give an example of, I've seen other customers sort of give the idea of sort of question I'm asking here is with another client we work with, we found that they found about an extra 2.5-3% of their customers were engaging that weren't answering the phone, that weren't actually even responding to emails. And interestingly, they didn't answer emails, but the reason was when they queried it was they were hard of hearing. Emails I don't understand, but I do get the telephone piece of it. But again, differences for different reasons. So again, anything particular there you'd like to sort of add? Anything you've seen that's interesting and maybe have sort of guided the way you've gone so far?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a response from people that won't pick up the phone. There's been that was the big market and the big win for us. And I think it just comes down to kind of timing. So what time are you reaching out to customers? And also they have their own time because it sits, so they might even see it come in, but it sits there. So if you're just doing voice, then you've got this narrow 30-second window to get them, but they could be out shopping or else. And I call it kind of sticky, whereas this SMS is sticky, so they can see it come in. And the vast majority of responses are reasonably quick, but you still get people that respond later on in the day, in the evening, in the afternoon, middle of the night and the morning, whatever their preference is. So I think the stickiness of it definitely makes a big difference. And I think the other area is obviously a dial is kind of restricted by how many people you've got to push it. So if we could triple our dialing on a morning and on a Friday and at the end of the month, then it would be good, but we can't. We need bums on seats for that. Whereas with the bot, I can really focus the bot on a morning, on a Friday is a big day for us, month end, 25th right through to the 1st and 2nd of the month. So actually it gives us this ability to scale through this channel at key times, and I think that's really important. And I think as well, when you're in a collections environment, kind of dignity and respect are quite a big things, big kind of, so a customer that may be nervous to kind of talk to another human can almost step back and express themselves through SMS. And I think it just gives them that extra dignity, that extra time to do it at their own leisure. Even that privacy, so maybe they don't want people in the home to children around them to hear them talking about debt, where they can sit there and they have that privacy, kind of more, almost intimate kind of connection with it. So I think that's the big key to why we're seeing such good results.
Oh, superb. Yeah, no, I know there's some great results you got, because obviously you do have people that were doing visits beforehand, and you changed over how that worked. Again, sort of does lead again into the next question. So you're helping me out big time here, mate. So the next question is, how are your agents affected? And I know one of the things that you do is you do have on-site visits with clients, and that's obviously quite timely and costly to do so. You've got to let them know when you're coming, and then they've got to be in when you turn up. They may not be in because you told them when you're coming, etc. So I guess from the agent's perspective, both from the office workers and those on the streets, what have they come back with? Have they been sort of happy with the way things have moved forward? Again, what's their experience?
I think it's been a psychotic experience. I think in the beginning, like all change, first of all, they were concerned about the jobs, for example.
Yeah,
so as you would be, does this mean I'm getting replaced? But I think once you give them that reassurance that their jobs will be safe, perhaps there won't be as many jobs in the future in those roles, but it'll be safe, and this will take away the volume and the ease of transactions. I think they embraced it, and without them, we wouldn't have been able to do it, Graham, if I'm honest. I mean, COVID again gave us a nice, because we couldn't do any field visits, so it gave us a nice time to get our agents at home. And we actually used that time to kind of recreate the kind of binary, easy transactions. And the agents actually helped us kind of with the interactions of that, and then to automate extra questions and extra responses and results. So they've really done it. And we're quite chivalrous at Snap. I mean, like, the worst thing in the world is if you drive 10 miles to somebody and you get to the door and they say, oh yeah, here's my card, take it all now. I mean, you come away feeling like you've had a great win, but actually the cost, it's not chivalrous, is it? The cost of it, for doing that is just like, you feel great because you got a great result, but on the other hand, you're like, oh God, why didn't that customer just reach out to us? And the reason they didn't reach out to us is because perhaps they barred the phone number, perhaps they didn't want to answer the phone number, but the SMS, I think, is a kind of game changer in that. So what we're seeing is that the agents are kind of helping and interacting. Of course, that 20% again, we need an agent there in the background to handle stuff that the bot can't. So they're seeing themselves in that, and it's almost become a hybrid kind of account management role. Whereas, like for those agents, kind of face-to-face and bot is how their day is made up. So it's kind of a hybrid role that's been developed. But yeah, really, it's released them to focus on real value rather than easy transactions. So I'm quite chuffed because of the numbers that we're getting. And I think, fundamentally they're happier and they're feeling more and more comfortable that not only does this help us scale and help us win, but also that they've got a place in that. And like, I'm a great believer in, like, some people believe like results are key in business. Like, a lot of people believe that that you need to have morale to get results, but I've never really found that in the times results lead to morale. So when results are going well and everything's great and you're expanding and people are getting promoted, it's a big thing for a culture of a business. And I think that the digital results have kind of given some people kind of a shoulder to stand on. So I'm really proud how the agents have kind of embraced and helped develop it, and how that they've now fitted in and see their role within this kind of new medium and channel.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's you're dead right there. I mean, we see it all the time, especially on the sales side, which I sit on. We see it all the time. That success breeds success. That first sale guides the next one, guides the next one, guides. And it is just, you don't even realize you're doing it, but your whole mentality gets a little bit happier and a little bit, just flow a little bit smoother, and it makes a big difference. And it's the same here, exactly the same here. And once people start to see the tools that are helping them do that, they do embrace them at that point. And they do realize, actually, you know what? If I can just do this, I can just do that. And I think, as you said, it's the agents and the customers actually guiding where you go next, which is really positive.
On a wider point, Jonathan, has that helped the business from the point of view of enabling change? Again, if you can build that momentum up, has this helped the business sort of respond and change and grow, or is it just in isolation on itself?
No, I think there's a lot of that in the future, Mark. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we're just using this at the moment in a kind of collections and a little bit in customer service. I think where the business sees this, I mean, we've just created a digital department. That's how much we invested in it. So we kind of cobbled, like it's sat between customer service and collections this a little bit, but now we've split that out into three. And where I see this going in the future is, we'll keep going with the collections piece, but I can see it really going into customer service next. And then I actually think the biggest win for the business is in the sales side. I think once we start to adopt it in the sales side, then that's where the real value is. And if you think about it, it's like from a collections point of view, traditionally customers less engaged at collections, so they'll speak to you kind of if they can or need to. In a sales point of view, the other side of like our loan, customers are really engaged. They really want to speak to you because, of course, they've got an added benefit of doing that. So I actually see that collections and customer service combined will not be as impactful as when we actually release it in a sales capacity. I think that's when the true value to the business will come. And isn't it great that, I mean, going back to the field team, isn't it great that while they're having a morning coffee and planning their route, that they've already got kind of 5 or 6 plans sat there in Webio messages just to respond to and finish off. And that really gives them a start to the day. They're almost going out with the result that they were coming home with, and therefore it's incremental, and that's when the real value to us is as well. The real value for our field team in particular is that they're going and getting the same plans in the field, but they're getting it from a harder kind of more impactful and more valuable customer from us now than a customer that would have paid us anyway if only we'd have reached out with a rare medium.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to sort of go down a little bit of that route again. So one of the things that we talk to all our customers about, one of the things they find really powerful, which is actually something you've used to engage with those customers early to get the new plans in place, is income and expenditure. It's one of those things that anybody we speak to say, yeah, it's a long-winded process, it takes forever. We're hopefully going to be going down the open banking route at some point, but then we've got to get the customers to agree to that, etc., etc. Now, we are looking at, obviously, open banking ourselves. It's an interesting area for us. Today, you do this using a sort of conversational form, I know. So I'm going to sort of flip the slide, and hopefully the next question will be about that. And yes, it is amazing. My notes are in the right order. So again, it'd be interesting to understand what you've done there, how it's worked for you, sort of benefits you've got, and also your thoughts on open banking and where you think it will actually come into this.
Yeah, income and expenditure was an easy place for us to start with the conversational forms. Again, what I like about it is that, again, if you send customer, well, there's 2 ways that would have done it before. Would have sent them an email where they'd have filled in, and it's just a big document. That where do you start? Where do you go? I mean, and the Webio and Typeform, which we use for our income and expenditure, just builds it into small chunks, one question at a time, helping develop that, giving customer confidence as they go along. So I think that's really important. Again, it was also plugging up a lot of time on our dialer. So income and expenditure with a customer, could take 5 to 10 minutes. That's somebody off the dialer. And again, it can be awkward as well. So, and going back to exactly the same points again, feeling under pressure, what environment is that customer in? Are they at work? Are they at home? Are children around? All of those things kind of were in the mix, I think. So we see that, like, we have 2 kind of ways for income and expenditure, one that has to be done and one that's voluntary. And I think that the voluntary one was next to nothing on completion before, probably because the agents didn't want to spend 10 minutes doing it as well. But really, I think it was, the last time I looked, it was about 60%.
Oh, fantastic.
60% of voluntary income and expenditures are being put in, and I think that's just because we're chunking it down, small steps, nice and easy to follow, doing it in their own time, that it's respectful of whatever environment they're in, and we've seen a big uptake on that. And where I see that going with open banking, we've just started with open banking. It's kind of at the front end of our sales journey at the moment, so it's more to do with our underwriting process. But how I see that, as long as customers give us a chance to, is first of all, we need to build trust and get authority to use that with customers, because it's quite invasive into their kind of personal environment. So where customers are open to it, I think that it'll be a game changer in the future with the bot. If we can get a bot that the customer can fill in, that can also then go and validate, and also in its validation come up with a suggestion that maybe even the customer not thought of, I think it'd be really powerful. It's one for the future. It's not something that's in the here and now for us, but it's definitely part of our vision.
Superb. Yeah, no, it's the way we see things going, really. The more automated you can get it, the more realistic the data. I mean, one thing, again, I don't know if you've seen the same, but when you're using conversational forms at the moment for the open banking piece, really becomes the big sort of live takeover area. But the data people are telling me from my other clients, the data they're getting collated on those forms, because it's in the customer's own time, they're filling it out bit by bit in an easy way to understand. The actual data they're getting is much more realistic and much more sort of, the way it is, rather than made up and just get off the phone. I'll tell you what I need to tell you, sort of thing. You finding the same?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. I think spot on. I think it's all about that environment. I think the environment's key. I think the environment, the chunking it down is key, and that's where we're seeing a big difference on the phone. And when you've got two humans, I mean, we haven't talked about compliance a lot, but when you've got two humans, you're more open to things not getting done, people's personal kind of thoughts getting in the way. Whereas what I like about Webio as well is that like our compliance score is just like the top at the moment, and it's because that things have to be done. You can't move on until things are done. So nobody forgets, or nobody doesn't think it was important because it has to be done. So I think our compliance has really, really improved. It was in a good place anyway, but like we're almost like at 100% on our bot compliance, so that things are getting ticked and done properly. So that's a point I've not mentioned before, but.
No, it's really key. I mean, without compliancy sign off, you're going to go nowhere. Let's be honest. They're people that can stop you doing anything, and secondly, if you don't follow what they say, you're in big trouble. It can ruin everything. So yeah, it's a really important piece of it. Just remind me, and I'll say it on the call here because it's a statistics worth knowing, but we've just started working with somebody with open banking just to point them through for a sign off, an agreement of actually enabling them to access open banking, getting a 70% positive response rate. So remind me to talk to you about that afterwards.
Cheers. I will do.
Okay, let's move on. Next one, really. Okay, it's about the balance. We talked about, bots doing what bots are good at, humans being involved where humans need to be involved, whether that's a vulnerability, whether that's a complaint, whether that's literally just a weird sort of, I was born when the moon was full sort of answer coming back. The mix that you've got at the moment between the sort of the bot and the agents, you sort of finding that about right? Are you trying to push one way more than the other? And also, are you finding if you are pushing more towards bot that is growing fairly quickly, and you're sort of 40%, 50% of where you think you would be? Again, just be interested to find out what you believe in that area.
I still think we're quite new on the journey, like for that. I still think we're quite early on the journey. But already our thoughts are turned into not only bot and human, but bot and voice. I think we've had a chat, Graham, looking at partnering up with a kind of a voice styler company. And we see that as being like, what we want to do is we want to put the customer at the center. So I think like when I first started, we had 1 or 2 customer journeys. Now we've maybe got 30, 40 customer journeys. And I think I mentioned this to you before, I can see us having thousands of customer journeys because I can see the MI looking at that customer and saying that customer's preferred journey is this in this scenario. So it might be voice, bot, human bot. It could be human bot, voice. It could be anywhere around. And I think that's the exciting thing about this whole platform and this whole idea is that I can look at a customer and treat a customer as an individual. And I can move that around and tailor that to the customer. Well, I don't even need to do it because this, the MI and the AI is driving that. So that's where I see it going in the future. But yeah, predominantly at the moment, we're quite junior we're quite embryonic in our journey with this. And at the moment, we are trying as best we can to get as much done with bots, but then we are looking at kind of easy transactional binary kind of transactions at the moment. And as that goes, it'll become more complicated. But that's the vision for the future, to have a customer-centric communication strategy. I would imagine that it'll be quite bot-driven and supplemented and pinned underneath with voice and kind of human bot or live chat, whichever way you want to call it. But that's direction where we're heading.
No, perfect. No, again, it's exactly where we as a solution are headed as well. I mean, the whole AI piece, to be sort of controlling where the conversation goes and how it responds, is really important. Now, we have the sort of AI linguistics intent understanding. We have a number of other things in there today, but one of the things we're focusing on is actually understanding why they said certain things, what they said. Is there any lie? Are there any lies in there? Are there any sort of key pieces in that conversation that tell me actually they like to see something in a different way? So that's sort of visceral thing, really. So me as a person, I like the bullet points. Don't give me all the detail. I can't be bothered with the detail. I'm not going to read for 20 minutes. Just tell me how much, when, why. That's what I know. But the next person, very different to that. They want to know how much, how that's broken down. What's the best way of doing that? If you start to learn those things and those patterns about people, that's what AI is very good at. You can guide the conversation the way they want to hear it, that will guide them back to the end. And that's something we're working on called a propensity engine. We're sort of very early stages of that at the moment still, but it's going to be a big game changer, I believe. So it's an interesting place. Okay, let's carry on moving on. So, customer experiences. I think, again, we've covered a lot of this off through our answers that we've had on other questions we've gone through. But in a sort of a blanket way, your customer experience, do you see that overall has improved? And feedback from the customers on these surveys that you're doing or conversations you're having, are they saying the same thing? And again, where do you think you've got to go with that? You think you're nearly there again, or I would believe you should never think you're nearly there, and I think you're the same as me on that, John. But again, be interested to know, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we keep evolving. I think we've covered a lot of it. I think that the key thing is it's done in their, just to reiterate again, it's done in their own time, in a space that works for them, gives them dignity. I think it's visual as well. I think that's the other thing we probably haven't talked about today is, we all have our different, preferred modality. Is that what they call it? Something like that. But whichever sense that we lead with in certain situations. So I think it does bring that visual into it as well, rather than just that blanket voice. It has improved definitely, and I think as well we have started to see. I've just had a couple overnight actually, where people are actually thanking us via the bot, and I think what that actually is that we've made it, one, easier for them. But two, when it's ended up in a human, we've got them to the right human quickly, because the way that the bots are geared, it gets to the right person, so a person that can deal with it rather than being passed off.
Yep.
So we're starting to see actually reviews coming through, and I had a couple overnight that have just been sent to me this morning, so I could share it on a team meeting. But I think it's that ease from the customer that's really helping them, and also we're getting it better. We're better at getting it to the right agent that can give them the right solution, and I think that's coming across well.
Excellent. Now that's the goal of this, isn't it? It's about one, trying to make agents' lives easier, but also if you're not improving the customer side of things, you're going backwards, and that's really the key to all this, in my opinion. So let's carry on moving through. So an interesting question. They always come up. Some are good, some are bad. I put the word positive in the question here, but happy to hear anything that's been interesting that sort of we would need to sort of look at and have hopefully fixed. But anything sort of you didn't expect to happen. You knew bots were going to be part of this. You knew you were going to try and automate your payments. You knew you were going to do some I&E work and engagement pieces. But again, anything sort of you didn't expect, anything that's worked out well, and anything, again, let's have a look at the flip side as well.
I think the main thing is the insights. I think. I mean, like we mentioned a few, haven't we? The compliance, the actual pickup rate of it has been amazing. Consistency, but was that unintended? No, I think that the consistency. We know if we do X, we'll get X, but that's probably not unintended. We probably knew that'd happen. So I think it's the data insights and the actual scope and initially we thought it might be quite narrow, and I think we talked about it in collections, maybe a bit of customer service from there. But it's just widened our whole thinking about what can we do, what can these things do for us, what can they do better than what we're doing now. So I think that's probably an under 10. It's almost like in most meetings I go to now, the first thing that we get asked is, "Oh, could digital and Webio and can the bot do that for us?" It's almost like the first question that comes out in every meeting, which kind of falls on mine and Jenny's shoulders at the moment. So, but actually, it's really exciting. And you go off and you spend like the whole afternoon dreaming, thinking about it, and actually, it is predominantly coming. I think that's the best way for me. The best unintended consequence is the insights that we're getting, but also it's just opening up and it's becoming a solution for problems that we didn't think it would do in the beginning.
Fantastic. No, it's good. There was no negatives in there as well, but that's you're right. I mean, I don't think we probably put. I think it's a good one for us actually. Whether we do have dashboards and we do have reporting and we do have AI that picks up on patterns and whatever else. But again, I think that's a really key one for us to start to think about further as well. So, okay, again, timing is getting sort of moving on pretty quickly here. Got a few metrics. I'm going to sort of whiz through the first one. They're the things we've picked up from conversations we had before and from reporting that we've had. There's a couple from your own point of view, which I'm going to hand over to you, John, if that's okay. So the first one is one of the things we saw working with you guys and sort of confirmed with you that you putting the digital in place, that this messaging was outperforming the dialer by 3 times. I mean, it's a huge difference, 3 times higher engagement and getting through to the end result, which is great. But again, as you said earlier on, we are working together with you to partner with a dialer company. So the dialer is a really important part of this. It's because it's about having a joint up sort of full width, full depth solution. Digital is a really important part of that, but actually, you still got to get that telephony piece there as well. And if you can get those to work together, so you've got a single campaign, one does its piece, the next one does their piece. This is what happened here. Therefore, this is the sort of outlying data that's left from that. What do I do with it? And you build a whole program in. That's when it starts to get really, really exciting. And that's what we're working with, as you know, with you guys on at the moment, which is going to be really a real good move forward, I believe. Next one there, 6% response rates from your INE forms. You mentioned that yourself during the conversation earlier on, but that is huge. 60%, you're sending out a form to somebody saying, please let me know, your current circumstances, your earnings, your outgoings, and your splits between cards and whatever else. And the data is really clear and really good. But again, at 60%, it's much higher than we've ever seen on the old, what we would call the ping pong fashioned messaging. These are the things where you'd ask a question and get an answer, ask a question and get an answer. People just drop out of that really quickly. So these conversational forms with the integration we have with Typeform, as you mentioned, is giving huge results through. And again, that's an interesting one where open banking will kick in further on. I think we'll get further improvements there. As I say, at the moment, we're seeing a 70% uptake on people being asked if they will agree to open banking connection. And then 30% reduction in field agent times. Again, you mentioned it already, but again, really important. You've got people going on the road, planning their routes, knocking on doors, lots of empty doors, lots of conversations that are uncomfortable, etc. 30% of those now, by sending them out in the morning, as you said, when they used to come home, what they used to come home with is now done before they leave. So really, really powerful stuff. Next one's, John, I'm going to hand over to you. These are your slides. So your data stuff, if you don't mind, if you run through those, and I'll flip to the next one when you're ready.
Yeah, I just want to take a couple of screenshots, really. I mean, cash is king, as we know. I just wanted to kind of demonstrate, and well, thank you all for your support, Graham and Mark, and demonstrate the kind of impact it's having. So I've taken the period out and some other things, but you can see quite clearly that that Webio is now bringing in double what the outbound voice dialer is in this short period. So slides say 1,000 words, so I don't think I need to say much more on that. And that's why we're investing so much time, and that's why we've created a whole new team and a new division to push this forward. But yeah, this is our past due, so customers that are not up to date. I can't say that all this is Webio, so I'm not going to be disingenuous on that. We always start the January, February, March after Christmas and Easter. We have a spike as well. Is always a tough time for customers being up to date. So it's like a wave that follows the year. But you can see there the trajectory of our past due rate. It's come down significantly through COVID. And I think a lot of that was our kind of the proactive way that we were able to gain information during that COVID period as well. I think that was the big win for us this year. And we're in a really comfortable place. And we've never been in a better place. And I know there's a few companies that are having a similar experience, but there's a lot of companies that aren't.
Yeah, very true.
If I was being ingenuous, I'd say that probably a third of that reduction I would put down to, I think a third down to our underwriting and just tightening a few things up. A third down to we'd have a normal seasonal downturn anyway. But I think a third of that, and it is a big significant drop, has come from our kind of Webio interaction, payment bots, and how we were able to engage with customers over COVID.
I think from the many conversations that we've had, Jonathan, with other clients, you guys are you're a small cohort of people that have seen those numbers go down. I think it's on general, they have gone up over the COVID period. So clearly, great that Webio played a part, but I think it's the wider business as well. So some great numbers there.
Yeah, very true. I was going to say we'll take the third this year, John, and we'll up it to half next year, measurable if we can, right?
Absolutely.
Always got to have a goal in place. No, brilliant, John. That's been superb. Thank you very, very much for your time on this one. This is the last question, and we will let you go. Just your ideas. What do you think the future holds for Snap in your sort of Webio and your bots or automation side of things?
I think it's just really summarising what I've said, really, just taking some key points out because it's been quite conversational as we've gone along. But I think Webio gives us a platform for growth. It keeps our costs in line, and we're a fintech, we're ambitious, we've got a big sister in America that's knocking it out of the water, and we need to expand into Europe. And it really gives us that platform and a key strategy for us to be able to do that while keeping our costs in line. So I think that's number one. It's also given us a really easy way to get that 80-20 kind of goal automation that we want. So that's key for us, and that's part of our future. We're really excited to get into this customer-centric solution, and Webio is like the glue that's going to glue all that together for us. So how do we communicate with customers across digital, voice, human, bots? And how do we create those customer journeys? So I think that's big for the future. We also talked about we've talked about some of the MI developments as well. So can we get to start looking at if customers say X, X, and X, what kind of outcome do we predict that? So some kind of predictive analysis as well that I've started to talk about with Paul, and that's really exciting for us in the future as well. So that's another key thing for the future. And the whole MI really, and the whole learning, and also I think that the big excitement thing is, who knows? I don't even know. I mean, we've come so far in. Was it December last year? No, November, December.
Yeah, it'd have been. I think it kicked off with the first test files would have been December, and then sort of kicked off really live in January. So yeah.
Who would have known how far we've come now? And it's that old. We don't even know what we don't even know yet, do we? We don't even know. Who knows what it'll be? I mean, we're working on SMS. We've talked about WhatsApp. We've talked about integrating a dialer. So literally, we can kind of tailor it to customers. But there's loads of stuff we've not even thought about yet. I mean, you've probably thought about it, Graham, and not told me. You probably.
You're too kind.
But who knows what will be the next? What will WhatsApp be? What will be the next WhatsApp in 2 years' time? Don't even know. Where will TikTok take us? Not sure how TikTok will be. Who knows? We don't know, and that's key to us, and that's what we're looking at. That's what's exciting for us in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the key thing here is, you do rely somewhat on those channels. As I say, I don't think TikTok particularly will become large in the UK, possibly in other parts of Europe. But what they're all doing is they're all actually fighting against each other a little bit at the moment. I know some of them are owned by the same company, Facebook and whatever. But one thing they're trying to do is to make sure they have richer functionality, and obviously that functionality will make the customer journey easier. And of course, we'll make sure we work with that to make it easier for your customers to get where you want them to be. So there's a lot of that coming forward as well. We mentioned earlier on the propensity piece, that whole ML, machine learning side of it, learning about conversations. When somebody says something, picking up the words they use, the timing they took to write it and respond to it, where the capital letters are, where the full stops are, what happened in the conversation beforehand based on where it's gone now. There's millions of little things within that, tiny little nuances that'll say, actually, they said their promise to pay is going to be for next Thursday, but based on they said this or that, little things like, the obvious ones are sickness, hospital, whatever, but those little nuances we don't even as humans pick up. The idea is the system will pick those up and say, you know what, they said it's a promise, but we won't just take that as read because we're not sure based on the conversation. So we'll guide the conversation to a different way. Not just thank you very much, we'll remind you next Thursday, but okay, before we do that, we just need to check this, or need to check that. So take the conversations down routes that will hopefully get to the end result every time based on learnings of millions and millions of different conversations that have been sort of held previously to that. So, no, fantastic. John, again, I'm going to thank you very much for your time. Mark, I'm going to hand over to you for a very quick wrap up, if that's okay. I've spoken far too much. It was obviously all about you, John, really, because we want to hear what our customers think, and it's been great. And again, I've said it 3 times, but very, very, very much appreciated, and thank you for your time. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, Graham, there's not a whole lot to add. Just again from myself, Jonathan, thank you for your time. Really some interesting insights there. I really got the that whole personalization and where it's gone from one journey to many. And you say nearly it now could be a unique journey for every customer. I think that's an exciting future for sure. So as a close, again, as Graham said, just thank you, Jonathan, for your time. Thanks for sharing that information with us. As I said, it was really useful to illuminate the story behind your experiences. So at that note, Graham, I think it's time that we close out, and hopefully we see everybody on the next webinar after this one. Thanks again.
Super. Thank you, everybody.